time for Be All You Can Be right here on the Beat 99.9 FM with the catalyst, Lanre Olusola, right here in the studio. And the guest we have in the studio today is also about good entertainment. He has worked with the likes of Usher. Should I keep going on?
Keep going on.
Because the list just goes on and on and on. You know what? I'm just gonna take it easy. I don't wanna blow your mind away completely. Guess who I have in the studio with me? I have Kehinde. Yeah, wait for it. Dacosta-Lawrence. Super duper producer, CEO, A&R. I don't know. He does everything basically, and he's right here in the studio with us. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
How did it start for you?
I was born with music. I happened to have my mother, when she was 20, got a revelation from God that she was going to have a set of identical twins. And they were going to be gifted. So she went and bought a piano. And she didn't have us till she was 40. So the piano I started playing on was actually 20 years older than me. And so when we came, the first thing I did was started banging on the keys. And by the time I was 2, I was actually able to play a few tunes here and there. And I started classical piano at 6 and did that for 6 years. And so I've always had music. I was very fortunate because my mom, at the time I came in, at the time people weren't encouraging music. It was always something else. But my mom was very encouraging.
But let me ask you, how many years ago was that? so that we can contextualize this.
And is the piano still around?
The piano is still around actually. It's with one of my uncles. Yeah, it's still around.
That piano might be carrying a whole lot of inspiration in it. I might want to just touch it, and start producing tomorrow.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. So Kehinde, tell us, how many years ago was that? So that people can begin to contextualize that you got into music not recently.
50 years.
50 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I'm actually 50 now. So.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. So we've got 50 years of experience to learn from on Be All You Can Be with the Catalyst. Kehinde's worked with the likes of Whitney Houston. He's worked with the likes of Usher, Barry White, Stevie B, Cornell Abrams, Eddie Murphy. So Kehinde,
yes, sir.
Let's go straight into the meat, into the juice. I know that you were born to do music, so you told us that God created and wired you, and even informed your mom ahead of time that she was going to give birth to
a musical genius.
Musical geniuses. He's a set of twins.
Yes.
And that she's going to give birth to musical geniuses. So tell us, what are your secrets?
Actually, you know what's funny is I don't keep anything as far as with the music is concerned as a secret. The saddest thing is that people have a tendency to perceive you as someone who's trying to show off what you have, whereas what you're doing is you're trying to share it. And in life, at every given point, at some point in life, you're going to be on the receiving end of being the student to a teacher. And then God opportunes you to be on the other side where you're now a teacher to a student. But most times when people are students, they have a tendency to think that you were never a student, and they forget, yeah, I was born with a creative gift, but if I didn't have a piano, guess what? If I didn't have a music teacher, if I didn't have my mother and my teachers in school, and even my brother who we worked together, and even some friends, all of that would have gone. So I've had situations where I've had to be humble and be a student. And that is what has afforded me the ability to be a teacher. But when I'm being a teacher, people have a tendency, because they think if you know something or you've experienced something, you're showing off. And that's a blockage for learning or for receiving.
Wow. So from what I hear from you, right, life is about learning and sharing your own experiences.
Absolutely.
So you crisscross between being a student and a teacher.
So
we are going to be humble enough, and you say that humility is very critical to you being all that you were born to be. So we're going to be humble for you to teach us today. So teach us a few things from your life's experiences, from working with superstars. You must have heard some of their secrets, you must have learned some of the things from them. I mean, Barry White, man, come on, Whitney Houston, come on, Usher.
Barry,
Teach us.
Barry White for me. Barry White became my brother and I's godfather in the music business. I've worked with a ton of people on different levels. I've never met anyone at that level with that kind of humility. The first, Barry White, we met him through his goddaughter. She was an artist that we were working with. Her name's Diva. She raps, funky rap. She's a little older than, or she was a little older than the younger guys doing the rap thing then. So, but she was doing okay. And she said, look, you have to meet my godfather. You have to meet and she never told us who the godfather was. And then one day she says, Barry White. I'm like, are you kidding? And she's like, yeah. And he knows about you because I always send him all the stuff we do in the studio. So one day we get a phone call and it's Barry White. And he's like, he wants to meet with us because he's heard so much stuff about us. He's heard our music and he wants to work with us. And I'm going, you couldn't fake that voice. You know what I mean? We eventually met with him. And the day we met with him, he almost missed his show because we were there for like 6 hours.
Wow.
And he held up sound check for like 3 hours. His management kept coming into the room and they were frowning, they were really upset because he was like, what is it with these twins, And Barry didn't want to leave. He was almost like, man, he wishes he didn't have. This was his first show ever in Atlanta. And he was almost going to miss it. But he said something that I will never forget. I actually write it as a quote on some of the things that I do. When I did a tribute to him, he said, Michael Jackson has a sound. Barry White has a sound. Marvin Gaye has a sound. And the Lawrence twins have a sound.
Ooh.
Now, coming from Barry White, that was like, whoa, But he was very humble. He would call us at least once every month. If he couldn't call, he'd get somebody to call. So I think the lesson from that is that no matter how big you get or how big people have made you, you should still keep it humble.
Humility.
Yes.
Next to God.
It is, absolutely.
I find that, if you want to get out of God's good book, stay prideful. Don't be humble. Then, they say that he who the gods want to destroy, make them proud.
Absolutely.
So the first lesson from one of the biggest stars is humility.
Humility.
Okay. First of all, I'm going to ask, where did you grow up?
3 continents: Africa, Europe, and America.
Wow. I'm guessing it obviously influenced your sound in a way.
Absolutely. Because I grew up at a time when music in Nigeria was... You see, a lot of people don't realize, as Nigerians, we have probably the most eclectic music in the world. Because we have Nigerians everywhere in the world. We have Nigerians in Russia, we have Nigerians in Ukraine, we have Nigerians in Europe, we have Nigerians in Mexico. So we have a tendency to listen to all their music and bring their music here. So the average Nigerian, even if he's not very educated, is very educated music-wise. And I think, unfortunately, people don't realize that. But anyway, let me go back to what you were asking. So I've been influenced by what I learned here. My mother was Brazilian, so I had a lot of Brazilian music, samba and jazz in the mix. And then in Europe at the time when I was in England, I was a teenager in England, there was a lot of fusion. There was a lot of pop, funk, soul. And it was the only place where it was happening. And it was going from there everywhere else. So by the time I got to America, I was in Los Angeles first. And that was when the Dr. Dre's and all that was going on. So all of that is part of what my music is.
Wow. So what would you call Lawrence music?
Good stuff. Because I would do jazz, I would do hip hop, I would do R&B, I would do gospel, just good stuff. The one guy that I would say I try to, or we, my brother and I, try to emulate as far as production quality is concerned is Quincy Jones.
And that is the guru.
That is the guru. Yeah.
Quincy Jones.
Yes.
The guru.
Yes.
So that would be your role model.
That would be my role model as far as production is concerned across the board. I wrote to Quincy Jones and he responded.
Wow.
And I didn't write to him based on an introduction. I wrote to him as a nobody. And he responded to my letter.
He must be a humble man.
Another one.
Wow. So basically, how often do you like come back into the country?
I did a 25-year vacation from Nigeria, and then I came back about 5 years ago.
How do you see the whole like sound and evolution of Nigerian music so far at present?
Some people won't like me for this, but I have to be honest. It's got its pluses and minuses. I think, unfortunately, we're going in the wrong direction. We started off okay, but I think we're steering in the wrong direction. We're going in the direction of where we're doing stuff that doesn't make sense. And if we want music to be around 20, 30, 100 years from now, we've got to bring it back to the center. A lot of people have been opportune to have followership, but I think, when we start doing all these, hey, Matiko, Tiko, Tiko, hey, Tiko, Tiko, I think it's getting a bit rowdy right there.
Wow. So any pointers, basically?
Do real music. Real music always works. I think you radio DJs also have to help, because a lot of times radio DJs will say they're playing what the people want to hear. I've been with the people. The people don't necessarily want to hear they want to hear good music. I think the radio stations need to infuse more of the, the Bezes, the people who are doing soulful music. There are a ton of them who are doing soulful music, but they're not getting the platform. And I think we're giving more audience to the Timbolo. I call it Tambolo music.
I was heading that way, because I've met with quite a number of musicians right here in Nigeria, especially those coming back to Nigeria from outside the country, trying to build a career for themselves in Nigeria. And the first advice they tell me they get from people is to be more Nigerian. And my first question is usually, what is more Nigerian? And they end up being pointed in the direction of some particular kind of sound and artists that we have right here in Nigeria. Like you mentioned, you said it's Timbolo, what do you call it? Yeah. So I do understand, I do agree that, the whole, how do I put it, different genres of music and, styles should actually be given an opportunity to expand right here in Nigeria. But anyway, back to you, Lanre.
Kehinde, really, what is music?
Music is an expression, and it comes from either inward influence or outward influence, and then it ends up being an expression. And so from the expression, certain genres of music develop. Like there'll be a movement, because a lot of people they find themselves expressing themselves in a certain style, and then it becomes a movement, and then a genre of music is born. Now, I think for me, that's why Fela Kuti is a genius, because he's the only one that I know that single-handedly started a genre of music without a movement. He was the core factor in it. Unlike hip-hop, you have the guys who sort of got together and started hip-hop. You have the guys who started R&B, and hip-hop is really like it was birthed from R&B, But Fela stands alone in that he single-handedly came up with Afrobeat, to the point where I think for the rest of our lives, if you hear first thing that comes to mind is Fela, before you realize who's doing it. So that to me is music. It's an expression.
Wow. And so from what you're saying, right, the messenger identifies that he has a message, and he wants to give expression to his message, and he gives expression to his message through music.
Yeah.
And he finds the genre that best aligns with his message, and he writes on that genre. And if the genre does not exist, he creates the genre. He writes. If a genre exists, he writes on that genre. If he needs to adapt that genre, he adapts it to suit his message and the essence of who he is. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and sometimes in the process he doesn't even realize that he's creating.
That was phenomenal. One thing that I picked up from what he's saying, because we shouldn't completely trash this concept of Nigerian music. We have it beat. Now, one of the things that we must do better is we must write better. The content must become better. We must move away from this waste matter, moving your waste, and seeing music as only sex. Because we were talking about a musical video just before the show. What artist were we talking about?
Nicki Minaj.
Nicki Minaj, yes.
and her latest video.
Anaconda.
That's
I actually had an opportunity to interview her before she became Nicki Minaj. I mean, she was Nicki Minaj, but nobody knew her. And her PR people, this was a show I did for BET. Her PR people were like, the twins, please interview her. And we did. And she was just starting out then. It was like she was really humble, really cool and all that. And I think somewhere along the line, it's like everybody wants to sell this whole...
Sexy.
Now, you know what's funny is that the truth of the matter is that it doesn't really sell. And let me tell you why.
Wow, that's wonderful. Wonderful information for
it doesn't
Nigerian
sell.
musicians.
It's a misconception. It's a make-believe.
Tell us about this.
Okay, if you count the top 10 selling records in the world, none of them.
It's sexy.
None.
Please mention the top 10.
Well, I'll give you a few of them. Michael Jackson owns like a bunch of them. The Beatles. You have Marvin Gaye. You have. But these are all the kind of people who have the top 10 selling. Even the rock artists. None of them is about booty or anything.
But won't people say that?
Even John Legend is doing pretty good.
But won't people say that that's because of the past?
But they still okay. Even if it was in the past, Michael Jackson's number 1 and number 2 albums are still the number 1 and number 2 top sellers in the world.
Currently?
Oh yes.
Wow. So it's not about tombolo. It's not about sex.
It's not.
Create good music and great content. So that brings me to a question about writers. Now you have worked with a lot of people. What is that level of competency in Nigeria?
First of all, we don't even know what a writer is here. Think about this, for instance. Whitney Houston, as big as she was, or she still is, she didn't write. Because she understood that it was better for people who did that to do it for her.
The expert.
The expert. She was actually very humble. She was a real person. She had, Whitney would drive herself around. She wasn't the kind of person who always acted like a star. Now, she was a diva, don't get me wrong, but she was a diva for the stage, you know what I mean? But she was really humble, she was really good. And she let you do your stuff. And she did her stuff. You know what I mean? Which is what I was saying. If Whitney recognizes that there are people, we did 6 songs at the time when we were working with her. This was before she went to.
May I ask what songs?
I was about to get there.
Yes.
This is before she. So we have an album that I don't know if they will ever release, but we did 6 songs before she went to Israel, when she was going through that whole. Is it Israel or Egypt she went to? Where she was going through that whole thing. So the record label kind of were a bit worried about her, so they didn't release anything because they weren't sure she was going to be able to promote it. You know what I mean? But they may still do it. They may still do it. But we did 6 songs. My twin brother, another friend of ours, and myself. And it was an experience. You never felt like you were working with the Whitney Houston. You felt like you were working with an artist, that was humble. But let's bring that back to home. If we had some of our guys here understand that there are people who are writers, and then they give them melodies and they give them the music and they write to them, then things might change. Because then it will be the writers determining the flow. Because I think a lot of these people can't write, and I don't mean that in a bad sense. But if you really think about it, if all you're doing is I dey go Timbo, I dey go Timbo, okay, so at what point is that really
inspirational?
You know what I mean? Or does it sound like you've done something of yeah? I mean,
I think most songs written in Nigeria are meant for the clubs. At least 99%. Everybody's trying to sing a party song in Nigeria, which is is too bad because it doesn't leave much space for people who do R&B. So especially soul.
Yeah.
I have a lot of soul musicians
Man.
right here in Nigeria. A lot of them switched
and
from
started
soul
doing
to something else. Quite a lot of them. I'm going to use R&B. I'm going to use Inyanya as an example.
Yeah.
Inyanya was doing some really, really like soul touching R&B, and I think the market wasn't really showing him that much love. Then somewhere along the way, he switched. He switched his style, and since then, I guess his career has just been uphill. So I don't know how to put it. When he kind of like switched up his career, has been going uphill, completely.
Well, I think sometimes when people are doing something and they don't feel like it's working because the reception isn't what they're expecting, then it starts to get to a point where you think, okay, let me do something else. Because I've heard him sing. He has a beautiful voice. And I think, personally, that he's not doing justice to his voice with what he's doing. Yeah, he's successful at that. One of the things I wanted to talk about, because you said we're talking to the young ones,
Yeah.
is that success isn't always what people perceive it to be, because we have a tendency to think of success as money. Whereas, there could be a guy who doesn't have as much money as Bill Gates, but he's more successful because he's a more successful parent, he's a more successful listener, he's a more successful husband. He may not have made the kind of money, but he may be even more successful at his business.
So money is not success.
So money is not success. So if you're doing, the fact that you've actually recorded a record, whether it sells or not, is a form of success. You've already succeeded. But people want to hear, so what did this do? So how much did you make? And that's,
So how much did you make?
yeah, how much did you make? How much did they pay you? And that's not necessarily the equivalent of success. Success is...
Kehinde, the last time you were in my office, and we were talking heart to heart.
Yes, sir.
Something struck me from what you talked about, the band and his best-selling music. And you talked about the content, you talked about the English, you talked about the wordings and the meanings.
Yeah.
So I think it's time for us to talk about that.
Okay.
So what was it that you said to me?
Okay. I feel that the song Oliver Twist,
Yes.
a lot of people haven't thought about why that song was successful. That song was not a broken English song. That song, the title of the song is called Oliver Twist, which is not a Nigerian. It's an Oyibo man. And it's not somebody that is hidden from the rest of the world. So it was acceptable by the international arena because they could identify with it. Then the other thing is, in the lyrics, he says, I have a confession. I love Beyonce. I love Omotola. Even though he says because her bum bum, is bigger, but he's speaking English. Now he has a tendency to use the O in his language, so it sounds like he's speaking broken English, but he isn't. So he says, I like it O or something, and the O makes you think it's broken English. I think our problem is that we think that we can force broken English on the rest of the world without actually letting the rest of the world even have a taste of our music first. And people, whenever I bring this conversation up, people would say, what about reggae? Well, what about reggae? When reggae started, as we had said earlier, as a movement of a group of people who were doing a genre of music, they found out that it wasn't catching on. So Bob Marley started the Wailers, or took the guys from the Wailers. In fact, the first album, they'd done one that was different. They changed it, and now he sang in English. If you put a microphone to Bob Marley's face for an interview, he will speak to you like this. Yeah, man, what I want? Everything okay? But you put the mic to him to sing. There's a natural mystic flowing. That's how he would sing in English. So what he did was he established the genre of reggae, and it became an international phenomenon.
Now, what I hear is, and what I know is that River Twist is the greatest recent export of our music that we have.
Right.
And it's because the band spoke English, and it made sense in that
Absolutely.
track. And it's one of the most downloaded piece of music that's coming out of Nigeria.
Yes.
And you also say the same thing for Bob Marley.
Yeah.
When he's singing, he speaks English, and that makes him internationally accepted.
Absolutely.
There is none of a lot of the music that we play, right, that is that internationally accepted. As even though we think that it's commercial in Nigeria, even though we think, yes, MTN and the likes of this world use them as callback ringtones. One of the greatest lessons from this Be All You Can Be episode is that, you know what, you need to engage, the right writers. You need to create good content, even though we may seem to be getting it right with some of our beats. Now, we also had a discussion around Psquare.
Okay, I love Psquare. They're twins and they're peace and fall.
Yeah,
and my brother and I are peace and fall as well.
So you're a little bit biased towards them.
I'm very.
Check this out.
I'm very. But you know what? Hey, if you're listening, I love those guys because I think they're the only ones that have really gotten it right as far as what they do is concerned. There's no Psquare album that you hear that doesn't have the same elements that got you attracted to them the first time. And I know from what I hear, it's not an accident. These guys know what they're doing. The other thing that they've been able to do that nobody else, and I say this, nobody else has been able to do it, is that these guys would do an R&B song. They'll do your Tambolo song, and they'll do a gospel song.
Wow.
And you won't even know that they've done all three because you're just looking at them as Psquare. But these guys do it every time. I gave you two examples. The song, not be everybody will go to bed at night to wake up to see the light, you know easy, oh, hey. That song is a gospel song.
Oh yeah, you hear them mention Baba God.
Of course, Baba God, now your handwork here. I don't even think that the so-called gospel artists who are trying to break into the tambolo music can have had that kind of a success, Then they have the new one. It's my testimony. I don't testimony. It sounds like they're talking about something else. But guess what? Testimony is something that we Christians can identify with. So I think those boys are doing it.
No.
So they're infusing a little psychology into it. They're messing with the mind.
I think they're thinking. They're thinking. If you listen to their love songs, you hear they're talking about sweetness. It's not about, I just want to take you and do stuff with you. They're saying, they say things, you know what I mean, that somebody would want to sing to his girl. But the love songs we have now, if you're a church singer, then maybe you shouldn't talk about money. But if you're an artist, then whatever genre of music you do, you should also think about getting paid doing it. I don't think it's for free because it's gospel. We have a tendency to think that because it's to do with God, it has to be free. It doesn't have to be free if you're working at doing the same thing that other people are doing to get paid. When you're professional. Now, if all you're doing is going to church on Sunday and singing there, then that's fine. You can donate that to the cause, but I don't think you should.
And for you to excel in what you're doing, you need money.
Absolutely.
And I have a problem with gospel musicians. I don't even think that they've started in Nigeria. Gospel music is huge. Look at Kirk Franklin. I mean, they were playing Kirk Franklin music in nightclubs, Stone. They were people were dancing to Stone at the nightclubs. Everybody was listening to Stone, and that is the essence of what gospel music is supposed to be. And you're best suited to talk about that. So
okay. For instance, there's some points where you hear some so-called gospel music that you're almost feeling like, okay, I'm sure God is saying, is that for me?
Can I suggest one maybe?
Yeah.
I'm not too sure. I think it was Benny Man.
Okay.
Like he sang something like "Shake that in the name of the Lord, move to the rest in the name of Jesus," you know, something like that.
You know, I mean, because
That might be a good example.
sometimes the quality is so. I mean, hey, I want to praise you, and you're thinking. I mean, you can sing in broken English, you can sing in your local dialect, you can sing in any language, but the quality has to be just as good as what you're competing with. And unfortunately, then people say, we sung to the Lord, or like that's supposed to make it, you know.
So it can be poor quality.
You know,
Yeah.
music is global, music is international, there's a standard.
There's a standard.
And so gospel musicians must, whether it's their voice, whether it's the lyrics, whether it's the beat, whether it's the entire music itself must compete globally and internationally. That's the point that you know I want to make. You know, and we must represent God properly.
Properly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I represent as best as I can.
You are fully represented.
Hey.
You know, I want to talk about, you know, the likes of Nelly, the likes of Russell Simmons that you have interviewed. You talked about, you know, being on BET and all of that. So what one thing can you take away and share with our listeners on the kinds of people that you've interviewed and some of the secrets of their success?
A lot of them know us. They know what we're doing, but a lot of them are not necessarily impressed. Because if they were, there would have been a lot more marriages going on with the music. If you think about it, a lot of the Jamaican artists have had marriages with the American record labels, where they've gone in there and they've seen that, okay, these guys are doing something that they wanted a little bit of, you know, so they marry them. When I say marry, I mean they sign relationships with them. Unfortunately, we're not getting that happening because they're looking, like Russell Simmons, for instance, knows what, you know, in the interview we did with him, he knows what's going on here. He was telling us a lot about that, but he's saying he hasn't seen anybody's head stand above water. Like everybody just seems to be in like a pool and nobody's standing out. And I think until we realize the power of what we have, because we have 170 odd million people in this country, we need to go back to the drawing board and actually say, okay, we've managed this thing for so long without structure. Let's put in some structure. It doesn't make any sense. I write a song and you're playing it on the radio station and it's selling and I'm not getting money in that order.
You know, Kehinde, you know, I'm going to challenge you.
Yes, sir.
Because, you know, I just don't like us to subscribe to just talking. I like us to do.
Yeah.
Is it possible for us to put together a music workshop?
Absolutely.
Where we begin to get people to understand this thing. You have worked with international artists. You know what they want. You know the kinds of relationship, you know, that they want, and the kind of marriages that are required, and the kind of quality that is important. I would like to challenge you for us to put together a workshop.
Done deal.
Music workshop.
Done deal.
So listeners out there, if you want to get into music, if you are already in music, you know, it's about all of us coming together and understanding what the world wants, and we begin to position Nigerian music, you know, for the next level, for the next dimension. What people need to understand is Nigeria is a big market, but international is the biggest market.
Oh yeah, that's where money is.
What we're saying is we want to reposition Nigerian music, you know, to compete, to match with international music.
Absolutely.
We want to take every Nigerian artist, every Nigerian production from Nigeria to succeed like the Oliver Twist of this world.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So, Kate, wow. What is one last word that you want to give all the listeners out there?
Excellence is something that you and only you can achieve. And when you achieve it, whether people applaud it or not, you know, because you trained for it. you worked at it, you tried to improve yourself at it, and then you got there. I think we don't understand what excellence is. We think that it's somebody else saying that was good that makes it excellent. No, it's how much you put into it. I spend a lot of time on YouTube, not just doing music, watching videos that edify me, videos on mixing, videos on mastering, videos on vocal techniques. And I'm what you might call a seasoned producer, but even at this level, I haven't stopped. I don't rest on anything. I'm always learning stuff all the time. I mean, people get shocked sometimes. They come to me and they see that I'm watching a simple video on how to record R&B, and they're like, I'm like, hey, there might be something in there that I may not have noticed ever before. There might be a new trick, there might be something that I can use. But we have a tendency to think that I've already arrived. And you can never arrive. The day you arrive, you might as well just say goodbye and then kick the bucket.
And so for us to keep this going all week, you need to follow me on Twitter at Lanre Olusola. Follow me on Facebook, Lanre Olusola. Follow me on Instagram, Lanre Olusola. There's going to be a lot of this that we're going to continue talking about this week.
Excellent.
What's your Facebook handle?
Kehinde Dacosta-Lawrence.
Kehinde Dacosta-Lawrence. So it's be all you can be with a catalyst, and thank you, Kehinde Dacosta-Lawrence, and Chris Drazer.